In the 21st chapter of Matthew, Jesus told a story about a man that had two sons. It says, he went to the first and said, "Son, go work today in the vineyard." "I will not," he answered, but later he changed his mind and went. Then the father went to the other son and said the same thing. He answered, "I will, sir," but he did not go. Which of the two sons did what his father wanted? "The first," they answered. The moral of the story is clear. Good intentions and empty promises are not enough. Actually, God can't bless our good intentions. He can bless us for our good intentions. Motives are very important with God. But if you want Him to bless something and multiply it, you have to give Him something to work with. God is looking for men and women of action. Be ye doers of the word, James says, and not hearers only. In 2 Corinthians 9:10, it says that God gives seed to the sower. This is counterintuitive, isn't it? We would think that first God should provide the seed and then we'll sow. But actually God says sow first and then I'll provide the seed. Many times while we're waiting for God to provide, God is waiting for us to act. Because you see, it's our demonstrated faith that moves God's heart and hand, not just our need. So we've just arrived at our second stop. And at this location, I've brought these earplugs because I have a feeling things could get a little bit loud here. All right, so I'd like to introduce you to somebody today who happens to be pretty important to me. It's my father-in-law.
Dan, good to see you,
Good
buddy.
to see you too. Now, of course, his greatest distinction is that his daughter happens to be the most beautiful woman in the world, but he also is a pretty good hunter. And today I've asked him to help us with a little object lesson. We're going to be sighting in one of his rifles, getting it ready. And in order to do that, we're going to have to take a couple of practice shots. That's where these come in. Don't worry, today we're only going to be shooting at inanimate objects. So tell us first, what are we going to be shooting today?
This is my favorite rifle. It's a 300 Weatherby Magnum.
Okay, and what is the process that we're going to be going through today?
It's really a simple process. We're on a short range, but on this short range, what we're going to do is set this scope up in order that where these crosshairs are lined up on will hit my target, my point of impact, 300 yards away.
So whatever you see in the crosshairs, in your scope, that's where the bullet's going to go downrange.
You don't want to be within 300 yards, I promise you.
All right, let's do this. All right, let's go see where it hit. All right, so this isn't too bad for a first shot, but what do we need to do?
Well, Dan, 6-8 inches out to low and 3-4 inches to the right. I'm gonna make scope adjustments. Well, I'll show you.
Okay, let's go.
Dan, let me show you some of these adjustments I want to make. First of all, we're gonna bring that thing a little bit to the left and try to get that height as well. So we're gonna be using this left adjustment. Let me make that adjustment now. That should be adequate. That's going to bring it closer. I don't want to overcompensate. And then on the up, we got to come up considerably. So let me make a double adjustment there. That looks real good. See where we hit this time.
Okay, wow, this is a lot closer.
I'm a little happier now, that's for sure.
Okay, so still needs a little more adjusting, right?
We got to come about 6 inches left and about 2 more inches high, and we got to be right on the money.
Let's do it. As you can see here, this was our first shot, pretty far off, wasn't it? Second shot got a little bit closer, and finally we hit the bullseye, and I'm sure if we were to continue this process, it would only get better and better and better. You know, we were only able to make corrections in this process as we saw where we were missing the mark. And I think that this is a good illustration for life. We usually learn more from our mistakes than from our successes, but unless you fire, you'll never miss. And if you never miss, you'll never be able to make the adjustments necessary to hit the bullseye. Now, if you're so afraid of missing the target that you aren't willing to take a shot, you'll never hit the bullseye. In order to succeed, you have to be willing to fail. You know, whenever I begin a new project or initiative, I never view my initial plan as the final draft. I dive into it knowing that I'm going to learn as I go. This means that I'm not paralyzed by fear of failure. Rather, I'm looking forward to learning what not to do. I see my initial plan as an uncalibrated machine with many dials, kind of like that scope. The dials are all of the different variables represented in that particular project. Once the machine is running, then I can see what's working and what's not working. I'm diligent to gather sufficient feedback, and then I begin to tweak the dials based on that feedback. Even when I feel like everything is running smoothly, I continue to step back and analyze the process often. If something's working well, I want to capitalize on it. If something's not working well, I want to adjust it or maybe even prune it off altogether. It's an ongoing dynamic development that never ends. This is the process where real progress is made. But until you take action, all of your planning and strategizing is simply untested theory. Thanks again for your time today.
Blessings, brother.
This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was great.
See you later.
Yes, sir.
You know, often people's inadequacies and liabilities paralyze them in fear. But actually, the way to address these issues is to begin to move forward. Like in a car, momentum and motion makes everything in your life easier to steer. As you move forward, you're going to discover what really needs your attention. You'll be incentivized to deal with it urgently, you'll make the needed adjustments, and you'll be able to empirically gauge your progress. You'll often discover that many of your previous concerns were actually nonsense, and you had never even taken into consideration many of the real issues that you needed to confront. Now, having said all these things, let me be clear. Taking action is not just a matter of trial and error. At its core, it's really a matter of faithfulness. Even if there are 1,000 things that you cannot do for one reason or another, there is always something that you can do. It may seem small or insignificant, but the eyes of God are on you. He's watching to see what you'll do with the opportunities He's given you, and your response will determine whether He entrusts you with more. I was preaching in a church a while back when a young man came up to me with tears in his eyes. He said, "Evangelist, I have a calling like yours. I believe that the Lord wants me to go to the nations and preach the gospel, and I believe I'm going to win millions of souls." He said, "But my problem is I don't know where to start." I said, "I think I can help you." He smiled. He said, "Really, you can?" I said, "Yes, I think I can tell you where to start. Start by telling your lost friends about Jesus. Tell your lost family members about Jesus. And when that's finished, go to the street corners and start telling people about Jesus wherever you can find them. As God sees your faithfulness, He'll give you more." Another young man came to me and he said that the Lord had given him a vision to start a house of prayer. And he told me there will be live praise and worship music going 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I said to him, "That's wonderful. When will it begin?" He said, "Well, first I have to go out and I have to find a couple hundred different worship leaders, and then I have to find a building where I can rent the facilities 24 hours a day." And his list went on and on. I said to him, "Can I give you a little bit of advice?" I said, "Why don't you start by doing one night a week, or one night a month if that's all that you can do. Start by doing whatever you can do. And as you're faithful with the little that you have, God will give you more." This young man didn't take my advice. He wanted to do it the more dramatic way. And I'm sad to report to you that several years later, there still is no house of prayer started. You know, I didn't start by preaching to millions of people on the crusade fields in Africa. I started as a teenager going door to door, telling people about Jesus in my own neighborhood. I witnessed in parks. I went on street corners. I stood on park benches. I stood up in restaurants and outside of movie theaters. I've been escorted away by police on more than one occasion for preaching the gospel. When I did finally launch into ministry, I only had one invitation, but that invitation became a second invitation and then a third one. And today I have more invitations than I could ever accept. But it all happened one step at a time. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Maybe you don't know how to get from A to Z, but that's okay. You actually don't need to know that. All you need to know how to do is get from A to B. And when you get to B, then you'll worry about C. And one step at a time, the Lord will lead you all the way to your destination. And speaking of destinations, we're at our next one right now.